Today's learning target is I can solve simple interest and compound interest problems. Today we're going to be talking about interest, and you've maybe heard of interest before. I'll give you an example of what interest is. When my wife and I bought our house, we had to borrow money from the bank because most people, when they buy a house, they can't afford, they don't have all the money that they need to buy the house. So they have to borrow money. So we had to borrow money from the bank. Now, we have to pay off the money that we borrowed, but we also have to pay the bank interest, which is basically money on top of what we borrowed, and that's for the benefit of being able to borrow money from them. And so each month we pay off our loan, but we also pay the bank interest, so additional money on what we borrowed. I can also earn interest if I lend my money to someplace, like you maybe have a savings account and you earn interest. So in that case, the bank is using your money and they're paying you interest. And there's a formula that we can use to find simple interest. And what simple interest is it's interest paid on the original amount of money that was borrowed. So to do that, to find interest, there's a formula we can use right here. So interest is equal to the principal, which is the amount of money that you borrowed, times the interest rate that you're paying, and we want to put that as a decimal, and then times that by the number of years that you are borrowing the money. So here's an example of what this would look like here. So this $1,000, I'm going to borrow $1,000 at 4.5% interest for 2 years. So this is the principal, that's the amount I'm borrowing. And here this 4.5%, that's the interest rate. So to give you some idea of what this means, that means for every $100, each year I'm going to pay 4.5%, which is $4.50 for every $100 that I borrow each year. So in this case, I'm borrowing $1,000 at 4.5% for 2 years, and the 2 years would be the time. So to figure out the interest, I'd have to plug these numbers into my formula. So here's how I would set up my problem. Here I want to find my interest, so my interest is going to be equal to the principal times the interest rate. Now notice I put this as a decimal. We have to do that. So 4.5% as a decimal, remember I have to move the decimal 2 places over. Okay, so I would have 45 thousandths as my rate, and the time is 2 years. Now I could use a calculator, but when I look at this problem, it's easier to solve mentally. When I times by 1,000, I just move the decimal 1, 2, 3 places to the right, so that becomes 45 times 2 is 90, so my interest is equal to $90. Let's take a look here and see how I would solve this word problem. It says Mr. Gable borrowed $1,860 to buy a computer. He will pay $71.30 per month for 30 months. And I'm looking to find the simple interest rate for the loan. So the first thing I'm going to do is to see what numbers I can plug into my formula here. Now I know he borrowed $1,860, so that's going to be our principal, the amount of money borrowed. Now he is going to pay $71.30 per month for 30 months. Now remember, the interest is how much money is paid over the course of the loan. So if I take that $71.30 right here, and if I'm paying that per month, and I times it by 30 months, here's what I get right here. When I calculate that out, I get $2,139. That's the amount I'm paying over 30 months. So remember, this isn't all interest. This is the total amount paid. So we could figure out what the interest is by looking at what was borrowed. So $1,860 was borrowed, and over the 30 months, a total of $2,139 was paid. So when I subtract the principal from the total amount paid, I'm left with $279, and that is the interest paid. So I plug that number in right here. Now, in this problem, I'm asked to find the simple interest rate. So that means that's going to be the variable R, and now I have to find the time in years that money was borrowed. and it was borrowed for 30 months, which would be 2 years and 6 months, and 2 years and 6 months would be 2.5 or 2.5 years. Now to solve this equation, I know that I can multiply in any order, so I took 1,860 times 2.5, and that gave me 4,650 R, and then that's going to be equal to 279, and now I'm solving for R. And when I solve for R, I get 6/100ths, but remember I want to put that as a percent because I want to find the interest rate that I'm paying. So 6/100ths as a percent times it by 100, moves the decimal 2 places to the right, and that gives me 6% would be the rate paid. The last problem we're going to work with deals with what's called compound interest. Now here's how simple interest and compound interest are different. So simple interest would say if we had $200 and 5% interest was paid on that for 2 years, we just plug those numbers in and we'd find that over the 2 years $20 interest would be paid on that. Now compound interest is different. Let's take a look at what compound interest does. So compound means to add on to. So let's figure the interest for 1 year for this loan here. So I used my formula right here to find out how much interest there would be in 1 year. So I plugged in my principal, which was $200, the rate was 5% or 5/100ths, and the time is 1 year. So if I calculate that out, I would find that in 1 year there would be $10 of interest paid. Now, compound interest means I add on this interest to the original principal for the next year. So year 2, now we started with $200 and then the interest after the first year was $10. So now it's $210 for that next year. And now I'm going to pay 5%, which is 0.05, for that next year. So for 1 more year. So when I calculate the interest for the second year here, I get 10.5 or $10.50. So in the first year, there was $10 of interest. In the second year, there was $10.50 interest. So the total interest over the 2 years would be $20.50 if the interest was compounded annually. So here's an example of how we can solve a problem that involves compound interest. So we can see it asks here, what is the total amount of money in an account where $600, the principal, is invested at an interest rate of 8.75% compounded annually for 2 years. So the first thing I've done here is I know that I'm compounding the interest. So I want to separate the 2 years out. So I have year 1 and I'm going to find the interest, and then year 2 I'm going to find the interest. Now if it was 3 years, I would put year 3 and I would find the interest for that. So now I plug the numbers in for my formula here. The principal was $600. I know that 8.75% as a decimal would be 0.0875. I have to divide by 100, move the decimal 2 places to the left. And it's for 1 year because I'm just finding the interest for this first year. And when I solve this on a calculator, I get $52.50. Now for the second year, I have to add on this interest to the original principal. Okay, so that's $600 plus the interest, $52.50, and that's going to give me $652.50. So that amount is my principal for year 2, and I'm timesing it by the same rate, 8.75%. Now this is for 1 year, okay, it's 1 year and it's the second year. So the interest in year 2 is $57.09 when I calculate that out. And now I add the interest in year 2 to the principal, okay, and then the total amount in that account, which is what it was asking for, the total amount of money in the account, would be $709.59.